Greetings and salutations. Welcome to this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Before we begin, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share the show with a friend. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. My guest today is a playwright, radio dramatist, screenwriter, and actor. He's a 5-time finalist and 2016 winner of Wild Claw Theater's Death Scribe, the International Festival of Horror Radio Plays, with his plays The Wall, Strange Weather, Back in Baby's Arms, The Quake, which was the 2016 winner, and Creatures of Circumstance. His play Chicago Collage was a winning script at Fireworks Gun Control Short Play Competition through Manhattan Theater Works. His commissioned piece Circle Be Unbroken, inspired by Mavis Staples, premiered in Theater 7 of Chicago production Unwilling and Hostile Instruments. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Travis Williams.
Thanks, man. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for coming. So, we kind of mentioned this. Well, it'll come up in next episode where when it hasn't been released yet. That I happen to be at your place of business, and or you work, yeah. And I was having a conversation with a couple friends, and out of nowhere I hear Playwright Spotlight, and I'm like, and it took a little bit to register. I'm like, what? Did I? Really hear that?
You totally had your whipped neck. Like, wait, was that me?
So I apparently you've been listening for a bit.
Oh yeah, I've been listening for a while. Yeah, it's like, and thank you even for having me.
My pleasure. No, I mean, that's the least I can do.
Yeah,
especially since you are a playwright. So.
Yeah. Well, no, it was just, I've been listening to your program for a while, and I've actually even submitted to things because of episodes that you've had on prior, with Jonathan from Gather by the Ghost Light, and then I actually really enjoyed your podcast with the author of Crabs in a Bucket, and I actually went and saw that play because of that show.
Really?
And I was sitting by you, my wife and I was like, oh, that's the guy from Playwright Spotlight, and she was like, just let him watch the show, and I was like, okay, all right.
You could have very well come up and said hello. I would appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, that's so long since that episode and that day. Here we are.
Yeah. Here we are. Yeah.
So on that note, what's your origin story into playwriting?
My origin story into playwriting was back when I was taking classes at Sinclair Community College in Dayton, Ohio. Okay. That's originally where I'm from. And I actually was doing theater school there. And what was really great is that I had to take other electives in the theater program, and writing was one of them. And I was lucky enough to be in a classroom with a actual playwright. And so then when I saw that he was a living playwright and not a dead one, I was like, oh my God, what? You can actually do this and have people read your stuff. I mean, I was a young, naive kid, first time stepping out. And so I was just kind of like, oh my God. So, so then I basically got into reading people like Shepard and Mamet and, Pinter and all those guys. And they really kind of had just this profound effect on me and my sort of scope of imagination and what you could do on stage. And so then, it was basically just no looking back from there. I started, dabbling, writing scenes and stuff like that. And then eventually started writing my own full length feature scripts and stuff. And then, the rest is history.
So how I hate this is going to be, I'm going to phrase it this way, and it's not the way I really want to phrase it. How much success have you had being a living playwright?
I would say, I don't know how you measure it, but for me, myself, I've met some pretty amazing people. I've worked with some pretty amazing people. I cut my teeth in, the Dayton theater scene there for a little while before my wife and we moved up to Chicago. Okay. And Chicago is really where I started, digging in deep, acting wise, writing wise, and stuff like that. I decided to take a program at Chicago Dramatist. So I had a lot of teachers there that were just really cool about helping me sort of craft narrative, helping me to craft theme, stuff like that. And so I would say that really where I kind of really got started was in Chicago. And my success there was, I would say it was I wouldn't say that it was anything I was the name in town, but I was definitely in the mix with people who were known. Sure.
Sure.
Which was just an exciting thing to be a part of. yeah, I got to work with wonderful people like Russ Tutterow before he passed away, and then just kind of hopped all over the place out there.
What were some of the things that you learned as far as crafting narrative and crafting theme?
Crafting, well, I think my teacher's name was Allison. I forget her last name off the top of my head right now, but that class in particular was really important because she started breaking down how you kind of have to start with character and narrative first, and then theme always has to come second. Okay. That if you start with theme, then essentially what's going to happen is that you're going to paint yourself into a corner because you're trying to appease the theme and not the characters and the dialogue. Okay. So that was really helpful in sort of like helping me just craft narrative, craft character. So
right.
Yeah.
How do you approach character yourself?
It's interesting because it's just like I'm a big Stephen King fan, and he always talks about there's like pantsers and plotters. Okay. I'm not a plotter. I'm very much a pantser. I've always kind of equated it to, you kind of like start hearing, I'm gonna sound like a weirdo, but you like hear a voice and you hear a scene taking place, and then I'm kind of like the guy that just goes and presses record and just listens to what these people are talking about and who they even are. And then after I get about 30 pages in or something, then I'm like, oh, okay, I kind of see what's going on here. And then I start to just keep going, and then by the time I finish, I'm like, okay, give me a couple weeks. Then I go back to it, and then I start trimming the fat, and then I start to develop like, okay, what is the underlying like tone or the theme that we're going for here? So, yeah.
So you don't edit as you go. You just.
I mean, I do on occasion. I mean, really what I do every time I open a document that I've already started writing, I start from the top and I reread what I wrote the day before, and then I kind of like nip and tuck from there, and then I keep going. So.
Okay. And so. So you don't do any prep work. You're just listening to your characters as they come out onto the page.
Yeah, pretty much. I usually get like an idea. I mean, I'm always reading. I'm always consuming story. So I think that in some way, the subconscious kind of like takes over and it's just like it feeds you something out of the ether. And then you're just kind of like, okay, start to listen to it, see if there's any merit to it, and then you just start to craft it. Because I mean, I've also done that before where it's like it's gone nowhere. Right. Or it's like it's such, it's not good that nobody's ever going to read it.
So then I'm assuming that also means that you write linearly.
Oh yeah. I try to. There have been occasions. So like this play that I wrote called like To Each Their Own, that was very much a puzzle. I even after I wrote that whole thing, I had to actually go in and take certain scenes out and then repaste them and rearrange them so that the linear timeline kind of was a little jumbled. But that was in order to sort of create suspense. And I realized that I could do that with that particular piece because it was crime noir. Okay, I could basically just rearrange it and it still made sense.
So, but that is that also playing with timeline as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you.
Yeah, I was absolutely playing with timeline. Yeah.
Is that kind of in a way like Pinter in Betrayal?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That was actually one of the first I would say one of the first, it was the first production that I saw in Chicago. It was Betrayal with Tracy Letts and Amy Morton. And it's funny, it's ironic because it's like my wife and I, we were driving up to go visit in Chicago to see if we even were going to live there. And I was reading Bug along the way. And then when we went to go purchase tickets, because you're like, oh, they're playing Betrayal. Let's go take a look. And then in the program, I saw that the writer of Bug, and I was like, wait, what? I was like, this guy wrote and he's acting in it. And then that was a whole nother sort of trajectory of being like, wait, you could do both. So yeah.
Do you perform in your own work?
So I did with To Each Their Own, even though I never wrote it with that intention. I don't write for myself. I don't like to write for myself. I think that if I were to go into any sort of writing and for myself, I think I would get too much in my head about it, thinking about the performance aspect of it. For me, I really enjoy writing for other people to kind of dissect and also to try to find their own voice in it.
And what about directing your own work?
I haven't directed anything that I've written. That's not to say that I wouldn't like to, but this process that we just did with To Each Their Own, the director was very open and very inviting for me to, if there were any questions that were needing to be asked, that she would basically be like, turn to me and be like, do you want to answer that? And then I would either indulge and like answer a question, or I would just kind of let the cast figure out elements of the play for themselves.
How was that being the playwright in the cast with the other cast members?
Oh man, it was awesome. It was awesome. So we did a staged reading of this. So the whole thing on how this kind of came about was that I went and I was working with this guy. His name's James, and he wound up being in To Each Their Own. I was working with him over at another restaurant, and basically what wound up happening is he was like, "Oh, I'm in True West." Okay. And I was like, "Oh my God, True West? Really? They're putting that up?" And he was like, "Yeah, and I'm in it." And I was like, "Okay." I was like, "Well, sign me up. I'm there." So I went and saw the production. It was awesome. It was over at Group Rep Theater. And afterwards, I was just blown away by the production. And then I was like, "Oh my God, would these guys ever really want to maybe do a play that I wrote?" So then I went home like that night and I polished up my crime noir play. And it had been sitting on the shelf for about 10 years, almost 10 years. And I was like, "Hey, I wrote this thing. You don't have to read it. But if you want to, here it is. I think you'd be great for this part." He read it and he got back to me in a few days and he was just like, "When are we doing this thing?" And so then we basically about 3 years later, after getting all the ducks in a row, we finally were able to make it a reality.
Did that mean also self-producing, or did this?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, it was mostly self-producing, but we went through. So the director of the play of True West, we basically like approached her with the script, and she was essentially wanting to start her own sort of theater company. Okay. And so Art Crush LA, this was their sort of inaugural performance. Was my play To Each Their Own, which I'm still like blown away and honored that they even allowed that to happen. So.
Okay, so that was here.
That was here.
Okay.
Yeah, that was at Atwater Village. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Great space.
Oh, it was awesome. Yeah, we had the little black box off to the left, like the first one when you walk up, and it was really great because we actually were able to build a bar in the lobby area.
Nice.
And then when people walked in, they just walked into another real bar.
Nice.
So yeah, it was fun.
They do some amazing work in that space. I forgot what it was. Oh God, I'm drawing a blank. I'm embarrassed. And you may have watched the episode, but they built a whole convenience store.
Oh yeah, no, I've seen the set design of that. I've seen like production pictures. I don't remember what play that was, but I did see that convenience store.
Yeah, I know it had to do with it was kind of based on the LA riots of I think what was that 93, and so they built the convenience store. But it was cool because it was open.
Yeah,
like the guy was behind the register and.
You could walk up and like purchase candy, or whatever,
and soda and everything like that.
We talked about that. We talked about basically having it so that it's like, oh, should we have like one of the characters who was like the previous bartender, like just slinging drinks, and in the end we were like, no, because we want to warm up. We want the space to ourselves, be able to walk around, and then we were like, well, we have this lobby space. Let's just utilize that, and then let's like make that our bar. Right. So it all worked out.
Nice. So. How? See, for some reason I had it in my head that this was you had done this in Chicago.
It was workshopped in Chicago.
Okay.
Yeah. It was. There's this lovely director. His name's Josh Sobel. That whole story is crazy. So Josh Sobel read the play in its infancy and saw something in it that was like really raw and visceral, and he was just like, "Oh my God, this is perfect for Chicago theater." Right. And he had an in over at Red Orchid Theater, which is like Michael Shannon's theater company there. And so he got us a full like month-long workshop there. And I had a great cast who was basically poking holes in everything that I wrote. And by the end of the workshop, what we wound up doing is we had an invited audience for like I think 2 or 3 performances, and just had them up on stage, reading the script out loud. And then afterwards, even the artistic director of Red Orchid, she came up to me and was just like, gave me a big hug, and she was like, "This is freaking awesome. Nice. I hope you guys go somewhere with this." And we wound up going to Straw Dog Theater Company. Now, Straw Dog Theater Company, we pitched them the script. They read it. They really enjoyed it. And they had like this really cool space in north side Chicago, where it was basically a really lovely black box, but then next door they had this other smaller black box that was also a bar. So they were like, this is perfect for our bar area. We'll make like an onset bar scene or bar play. And then I think it was probably about like 2 to 3 weeks before we were supposed to go into rehearsals for it. Might have even been just a little bit longer. They lost the lease.
Oh, no.
And then a couple months later, the whole building was demolished.
What?
Yeah. And then I tried to pitch it around town. Nobody was interested at the time. And so then my wife, being awesome, she was like, just go ahead and put this on the shelf, start writing something else. And so then that's what I did. What
year was this?
Oh my God. It was over 10 years ago.
Okay.
So yeah, I want to say, but it was over 10 years ago, probably maybe 2012-ish.
Okay.
2012, something like that. Yeah.
How accessible? Because I'm not familiar with the Chicago market. Obviously, we know how LA is, and we obviously know what New York is like. But what's the Chicago market like? How accessible is it? And when you say that you're pitching, are you actually doing this in person and it's just like showing up and say, hey, I got this thing? Or are you doing everything electronically? Like because that's how we do it now.
Well, in some instances it's in person. So other times it's like, via email through people like, hey, I know so-and-so, they thought that you might be interested in this script, that kind of thing. The Chicago market is very, the circle is very small.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's basically like if you know like 10 people, they know 10 people, and everybody knows each other. So that's why it's really good not to be a jerk in Chicago. Word spreads fast. Thankfully, I don't consider myself a jerk, so I was able to like get a lot of good like work. So,
sure.
But yeah, I would say that it would be it. I mean, it's very Chicago is really cool in that it's a theater town that doesn't really. Am I allowed to cuss?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, it's a theater town that doesn't take a whole lot of bullshit.
Sure.
And there's a lot of people there who are really striving for something that's really unique, in whether it's the performance, whether it's the writing, whether it's the set design or lighting. Like it all comes together, and I'm so like grateful for the experiences that I had in Chicago, because it's like I don't think I'd be even half the writer I am today, just based off of like not having lived there or having lived there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. How about Dayton? How's the Dayton scene?
Dayton scene's small. I mean, okay. Yeah. There's like a few community theater places that are there. They're great, and like and they put on some really fun shows. But I mean, it's you'd have to go to Cincinnati, get a little bit of a bigger market. But even that's not too crazy. But you can always, I feel like even in like small cities, you can still find pockets where people are just doing really cool stuff.
Sure.
So, and I would say Dayton is definitely they are creating pretty good stuff down there. They're making some really cool choices. I think the other day, there was like I forget, Dayton Playhouse or something. I forget where the production was, but they were doing like another Tracy Letts play, which I was like, oh, that's really cool. And I think it was even Killer Joe, which I was like, damn, that's like they're going hardcore. So yeah.
And the reason why I ask is because when Stan Mayer was on, he was telling me that I guess the Cleveland market is huge. It's a huge theater scene. I didn't realize that.
It is, yeah. Though they also have, they have that like they have like a Cleveland Broadway strip where they have like this massive chandelier that you can stand under and take pictures and stuff. But Cleveland's got I've heard a lot of really good stuff about the Cleveland like theater scene up there. A lot of really good independent houses that are doing some pretty cool stuff too. So yeah.
And what was the decision to pack up and move to LA?
God, sorry, Chicago is mostly the winter.
Fair enough.
I mean, those winter blues, man, they are a real thing. That particular year too was just brutal all around. We decided to stay a few extra months just to save up a little extra cash so that we could like pack up a U-Haul and drive out here. But even Mr. Tom Skilling from WGN News, man, he was like, in the cheeriest voice, was like, congratulations, everybody. We surpassed the record. Least amount of sun in 6 months. And I was like, great. No wonder I feel like crap. So, yeah.
Wow. All right, we'll stay away from Seattle.
Yeah. But no, it was the sunshine. My wife and I, we honeymooned out here in California, and we just kind of fell in love with the state. And we were like, you know what? Why don't we just give it a shot? Why don't we just give it a try? And so we just decided to move out here, and we're glad that we did, because even now I think in Chicago it's like 19 degrees today with the snow blowing, and I'm like, and the thing, people are always like, oh, but you're from the Midwest in Dayton, Ohio, you guys get bad winters up there too. And I'm like, no, but the thing is, in Chicago, you suit up for war against the weather, because you have to walk to the buses, you have to walk to the trains, and you have to wait for those things. And so it's like, that's part of the reason why.
Got it. How's the LA, outside of to each his own, how's the LA market treating you as far as playwriting goes?
It's funny because it's like I moved out here mostly for screenwriting. Okay. So I would probably say, as far as like playwriting, I haven't necessarily stretched my wings, so to speak. Sure. But I mean, I have enjoyed getting to know people within the theater sort of circle out here. It is interesting though, because it is its own sort of interesting beast, in that there is a lot of theater that's going on out here. And it does feel like it's similar to Chicago in a sense of like, if 10 people, they know 10 people, and it's like, everybody kind of knows each other. But yeah, I just don't feel like I've scratched the surface yet, to be honest. Right. I've met like a good handful of people, especially doing this play, where they're recommending that I, get in touch with so-and-so, or I get in touch with this company and that company. And so, yeah, I've seen some really cool productions. I really like the Road Theater. I feel like the Road Theater is doing some really cool stuff. And then I've just seen a lot of cool indie productions at Atwater Village Theater, which has been really cool. So, yeah.
Was Stephen King the impetus for you going into the horror genre in theater?
No. The horror genre in theater specifically came from Chicago. No, I've always been like a horror kid. I kind of got that from my grandmother and my mother. So long story short there is that when I was a kid, we lived just far enough from my grandmother that when I would take trips down to go visit, and I would like stay there for like a week or whatever. And one of the things that we would do is we would go to Blockbuster, comb through the horror section, and she'd be like, oh, we're watching this tonight. And then basically when we were watching horror movies, she'd break them down for me like, oh, isn't that cool how his head ripped off? That's total prosthetics. That's practical effects. And, sort of like demystifying it for me. So then I just started to like find the enjoyment out of it. And my uncle was a huge horror fan too. So I was like kind of looking up to him to see like, what's like some good stuff that I should be getting into. And then my grandmother was also in Stephen King's fan club and stuff. And so the bug of horror had always existed since I was a kid. But when I moved to Chicago, it wasn't until I found Wild Claw Theater, and those guys just like, basically I'd probably say my volume for horror was probably at a 4, but when I started writing for them, it was like cranked up to 11.
How did it translate for you? Watching movies is one thing, but writing for the stage and that genre, how does that translate? It's
really interesting because I'm like, I just finished a vampire play that I wrote, and it is, I will say that writing.
Is this stage or is this radio?
It's stage.
Okay.
This is stage. Yeah. Because I've written a lot of like horror radio plays, and like those are in a class of their own, just because like you can always sort of have suspense building based off of like what's on the other side of the door, or what's making that noise, and I feel like with horror radio you can like sort of build the suspense through like noise, just like a movie, that's why The Exorcist is so successful. Is like most of the violence doesn't even take place in the movie where you're actually seeing it. It's when Reagan's door is shut and her mom's reacting to what's this, like the sounds coming from her room. So I think what's really interesting is I had the really good chance to see like some good horror plays in Chicago where you can do practical effects, like shooting someone in the head on stage. I got to see that. That was awesome. It was a guy shooting his zombie girlfriend, and it worked so well. And but I find what's really interesting is that horror on stage really kind of pertains to how you use language.
Right. Okay.
You can build suspense and imagery through language. And if you do it successfully enough, you can sort of like trick the audience into like kind of being on the edge of their seat, or having that sort of racing pulse that something's about to happen, like because you're building it up through suspense through either the dialogue or like through something that like the character is like in a monologue retelling or rethinking. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. How do you... Is there a secret to building success? It's not success. I'm sorry, suspense.
Success. Yes. Let me begin. No.
I think you have to go watch The Secret of My Success. I think that'll do it. No, I'm sorry. The secret of suspense, is there really something that advice you have, or like this is really kind of how you achieve it?
I think every situation, like particularly with horror, it's I mean, you know, each subgenre sort of has their own rules baked in. So like, you can have, gosh, I'm like trying to think of like, you know, with a slasher film, there's always the final girl kind of like being picked off when she's going to find the body. You're building suspense after every body that she finds or whatever. But then there's like demonic possession, stuff like that. But you essentially it's whatever subgenre that you're in, it's really about digging into whoever the character is, your main character is, and how the monster is sort of in relation to maybe what's happening in that character's life.
Okay.
So it has to almost kind of be like a, I don't know, like its own, the monster has to be a villain of the person's sort of like multiple existences in a way. Okay. The thing that they fear most, whether that's like a, you know, they're about to lose their job, they're about to lose their house, and then suddenly it's like a werewolf's attacking them. Then that becomes like the thing that they have to fight in order to sort of like keep a stasis. Right. Okay. You know? Yeah.
Well, you've listened to this podcast enough. You know that I'm going to ask you a question that's going to throw you off because you're not in the middle of doing it. It never fails. It never fails. So radio play. So I did start listening to Back in Baby's Arms.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And I guess I suppose that, and not to say that, you hear radio play, but I didn't realize that you did them staged.
Yeah. So that's the like really cool thing about Wild Claw was that so when I first submitted to them, I didn't get in, and what they do is that they blind read every script that came across their desk. Right. Okay. And it was all international. So I was competing against people from like all over the world, and I went to a couple of them and I started getting like, oh, okay, this is kind of what they're looking for. This is what they do, and stuff that could be done live. And so what they would do is they would have like actors on stage dressed like real nice with like red ties and everything. And then they would have them at music stands, and then they'd be reading the script while they had a live foley table where they're making all the sound, like all the sounds and the escapes and everything in front of the audience. And so it's like, it's basically not just like a feast for the eyes and the ears, but it's just like, it's fun because you get to see these people making like the most absurd noises in order to like appease the script. It was awesome. Yeah,
because as you know, we've talked about it. We there was Campfire Radio Theater, which with John Ballantyne, which I don't know if you've actually had the chance to listen yet.
I hadn't listened to that one, no.
And then of course, Gathered by the Ghostlight. Yeah. So I mean, there's different ways to achieve a radio play. So I just went ahead and went with that assumption, but to hear that hear the audience and everything, was kind of cool.
Yeah, the first one that I got accepted into was with The Wall, and that was that's a pretty twisted piece where it was basically about like a couple that the guy works at a hardware store and his girlfriend and him are basically like broke, and so he goes and stalks this customer who comes in and regularly pays with big wads of cash, and then you find out that like, oh, that guy has people chained in his basement, and all the hardware and tools that he's been buying from this guy he's been using to harvest their meat.
Wow.
Spoiler alert, yeah. And but what was funny was that that's like I went there and I was at the theater and I was watching it and I was having a great time with it. Later on, but like my buddy and I, we got separated because it was a packed house. So I found seats over here, he found seats over there, and later on he came up to me and he was like, "Dude, you made a woman pass out." And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Yeah, she was grabbing onto her boyfriend and then she just blacked out, and they had to like wake her up and make sure she was okay."
Wow.
And I was like, "Okay, well, I'm really sorry that happened, but I'm also like, that's like a badge of honor in the horror world, so I'll take it, I guess." Yeah.
Wow. So when you're writing for a radio play, even for the stage, do you just kind of limit stage directions in that regard?
Yeah. I mean, I'm usually not writing a whole lot of stage directions and stuff that I write because I know that it's always going to be a little loose depending upon how you make the set and the restraints that you have with production and stuff. So I don't go too hard into writing too many stage directions unless it's like necessary for character to change or whatever. So
and what about and are you writing the foley? What sound effects you want?
This horror radio play this horror stage play that I just finished, it's definitely got foley in it. But that's necessary because it's like that again is it's stuff that's like maybe happening on the other side of a door. Right. So that's again building that suspense. So that's necessary to write because it's like you kind of need that. But for the most part, no, I don't lean too heavy into stage directions.
What about like to each his own? Like when you how detailed do you get into this into like the set on the page? Like do you get really specific and like especially since it's a bar and or just like say.
Yeah, no, with respect to that, I mean, it was like, gosh, I think the most detailed I got was like, there is a phone on the wall, that they do take phone calls from, and then even the characters address it through dialogue, like, answer the phone or get the phone. There's one window where light comes through, sort of like the classic noir where you kind of have like the cascade of like, light through the blinds kind of thing. And then other than that, not a whole lot. I did write, in that instance, I did write the stage directions for the fight scenes that took place in that. But I mean, I was very like, when we got to actual like combat training and stuff like that, I was kind of like, just make it look good. Like, sure. I'm not married to anything. You could do what you want. Like, just make it look like it's cool. But that's it. So you go in that instance. You kind of went a little more detailed opposed to the good old fashioned Shakespeare. Yeah,
they fight.
Yeah. I did. I had to go a little bit more because I know that like with stage like combat, combat itself on stage still has to tell a story. I mean, good stage combat like does. And so like I was communicating, how I wanted it to look like, this guy's been drinking a lot, so he's a bit sloppy, swinging a bottle, stuff like that. And then the other guy hasn't touched a drink, so he's a little bit more poised. He's able to grab hold of him and like slam him here, punch him here, and but for the most part, no, I pretty much was like, again, here's my foundation, roll with it how you will. Right. Okay. So yeah. What about for
horror? How detailed do you get into the stage direction of the action of the scene in that regard when it comes to, I don't know, fighting a vampire or whatever like that?
Yeah. No, with stuff like that, well, with this new one that I just finished, that was, God, there is like a violent scene that takes place, but it's off stage. So like a character comes back and then they're like covered in blood, but, spoiler alert. But, for the most part, I mean, it's really interesting because it's like what I was learning when I was crafting this piece, more so than my others, is that like, I didn't want to go camp with it.
Sure.
And there's a really fine line that you can actually like find yourself on when you're writing like a horror play for stage, because it's happening in real time. Right. So it's like it has to be believable in a sense to get people on edge. And I wanted it to feel a little bit more realistic, like, oh, this could potentially be like a reality for someone. Mm-hmm. So I found myself a lot of the times just kind of like focusing on that and the realism of the dialogue. So with as far as like stage directions go and building suspense, I only really did it through the soundscape. Right. Okay. Didn't do a whole lot of like combat or anything like that in that.
Do you use blood bags?
We talked about it with the when we did To Each Their Own. We flirted with the idea of like exploding blood packs, but right. I mean the worry of that is that like, what if it goes off in the middle of a scene, or it's like the actor moves a certain way and it tears and they're just starting to bleed from their stomach and you're like, oh crap.
Yeah. first episode of Playwright Spotlight, April Littlejohn, she writes horror for the stage, and I think every night they were making blood bags.
Oh,
but they would have they'd have them strategically placed.
Oh, sure.
around the stage, and then when that came, it was like.
Yeah.
But they also had the splash zone too. So like the first, I think the first two, three rows.
I would hate to do that. Someone. No, we did have one of our guys. So I was involved in the actual fight scene in the play, and the guy that I was in the fight scene with, I mean, he just gets his ass handed to him so bad, and so we needed to have something to show that he's like bleeding. So he was able to do a blood capsule like in his mouth, and he sold the hell. Jason, you sold the hell out of it, because he would just like put it on his fingers, and it would just be like in the dark. It just looked awful. Like, yeah,
that's awesome. And then how does that go? I mean, I'm imagining that I mean, is there a wardrobe change in that regard if you got it all over, or
no, thankfully that was just his unfortunately it was his one scene.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And that was the thing when I wrote it, I was like, oh God, like, I wrote the play for this one actor to have one big scene, and then it's like, and it has a fight scene in it, and then we don't see them anymore. Wow. And so just trying to find that right actor who would be like, yeah, I'll commit time to rehearsing this, and like, I'll commit time to studying and training for this stage combat. Like, it was actually something that I was very insecure about, because I was just like, man, I really hope that I did this scene justice, like, because I feel bad that if a dude just wanted to commit to this, and then it's just like it turns out to be a lackluster scene. So that scene in particular, I really worked my ass off like crafting, because I wanted it to be not only like land for the audience, but also for that actor to be like, okay, this is worth my time.
Obviously, my guess is it's important to the play. Like, if you take that scene out, it's you're going to lose something.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So,
and it's funny because it's like a lot of people saw the play and they were like, that was my favorite moment, and then they were like, that guy was my favorite guy. so Jason got a lot of props on that. Yeah,
that's awesome. So you didn't find an opportunity, or I shouldn't say find an opportunity. Did you? How do I want to put this? There was no way to really kind of expand his role a little bit to take that pressure off of you as well.
Yeah. No, I looked at every angle, but like, without spoiling it too much, I mean, the guy gets beaten so bad, and then basically like I walk him down to the cellar, and then we just never see him again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then the play ends where they make a mention of him, but I'll let you.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Have to give it a read.
Yeah.
How'd your playwriting affect your screenwriting?
It's interesting because it's just like it's its own different beast altogether. Yeah. I really had to retrain my brain from focusing on like language being the visual, or language being the thing that creates the visual, to then just exploring what the visual does for the language, in that like show and not tell. So I feel like when I go back and forth, I kind of whiplash a little bit. But I would say that playwriting helped me with regards to crafting story, crafting narrative, and really knowing how story works in that regard. I think that with film, what's interesting is that like you have a little bit more freedom to kind of write like a 3-page moment or scene, or even a 1-page scene where a character discovers something or whatever. That's kind of the freedom that you have with screenwriting versus with playwriting. I'm kind of an old school guy where I like one location. I like a lot of dialogue. I like a lot of long one takes. So just retraining your brain to go to those short snippet things, but then doing a lot more show, no tell. Yeah.
When you started screenwriting, I'm assuming that you were still writing plays.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you have any discoveries doing screenwriting that translated over to playwriting? Like, ooh, this helps my playwriting.
Oh yeah. I mean, again, I keep talking about this vampire play just because I just finished it. But that, like, I was in the middle of another vampire screenplay, and then like a cult screenplay, and then I jumped ship over to like finishing this idea for this like stage play that I wanted to do about vampires, and then I was actually pulling from bits of that moments that I really enjoyed that created, I feel like, suspense for some of the characters into that script, and they just worked because it was like practical things, stuff that you don't need to have a whole lot of like production value behind, a knock behind the door or the light suddenly getting cut off, that kind of thing.
Do you are there devices that you reuse? Not like knocks behind the door or anything like that, but I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, just like, I always find a way to sneak that in to the things I'm writing.
No, I think, I mean, I don't want to speak for all writers, but I mean, I've read enough horror books from the same writer, even where they even like recycle themes that they're trying to work out. Okay. And I feel like that there are still like a lot of playwrights who I've read a few of their works where I'm like, oh, they're really trying to work through that idea, either about themselves or how they're looking at the world. I feel like that's mostly what I kind of like recycle, is that like I'll kind of just find myself like writing about a similar thing, but in a different vein, because maybe I'm just trying to look at it at a different angle, or get a different perspective on it, for myself in a way. I don't know. But, as far as like, tools and devices, as far as building suspense or building scares, yeah. I mean, they kind of already existed, in like all the classic horror films and stuff like that. So it's like, I feel like for me, in a lot of ways, I'm just stealing what the greats did.
Oh, that's the best advice they always give.
Yeah. So, and I'm just kind of making it my own, but yeah.
Are there things that you still struggle with, considering how long you've been writing, where it's just like, okay,
things that I struggle with, I would probably say maybe that, like, just making sure that ending lands. And it's not a struggle in that it's like, oh, I don't write good endings. It's just, right. I feel like crap, like when you go through the journey of like writing something from A, B to C, like you want to make sure that every single time that ending just sticks. And I think that it's like, for any writer, you kind of, it's almost like the journey isn't worth it unless that landing, happens. And so I feel like that maybe that's like a thing where I'm always like, not a weakness, but I'm always like, nervous about, making sure that that's like a good ending, or is that the way that this story should end? And then I'm trying to like, I think about 5 different ways that it could. So okay. I don't know. Yeah.
That's what I was wondering. If there was a trick to making a good ending, or to making it, ensuring that it lands, I guess.
It's funny because it's just like, I was talking about this with another writer buddy of mine, and they were like, they had this idea for a story, and I was listening to them, hearing them out, and they were just like, we just don't know how we want it to land or go into the middle of the story or whatever. And I'm just like, well, look back at the first 20 pages that you've got, because you've already set up the rules to your story. And so I think I do that a lot myself, where I'll always go back to the first act, because the first act is always like, it tells you really where you're going to end, whether you mean to or not. But like, I feel like that's how a lot of stories get their bookends, is because it's like everything that you set up at the beginning, the ending is in there, whether you know it or not.
Like, okay.
Yeah. Especially in horror too.
Sure.
But yeah, so I think that's what I've always found, is that it's like, if ever I'm like stuck on an ending, I'll always look back to like the first 25 pages and I'll be like, okay, what's in here that's like, that's the definitive ending, or something that a character says that's like, that's what the button is, or the whole thesis to the idea that they started with, like at the very beginning. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. What's your process? Do you just mean, are you sit down and write, or do you force yourself? Is it 5 in the morning, 5 to 8?
No, I don't. God, I do need a routine. I don't have one. I mean, for the most part, I wake up, I have coffee, and I read, and then I walk my dog, and then when I come back from my walk with my dog, that's when I'll start to sit down and actually start pounding stuff out. But I mean, it happens sometimes. I mean, I work, so it's like you either have the time or you don't. I would love to do it every single freaking day, but sometimes it's just like, I don't know, 4 times a week, maybe.
That's still a lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. I always just, I don't know if it's kind of like I always hear those writers in the back of my head where they're just like, you got to write every day. You need like 10 pages every day. And I'm just like, God, in what time zone?
Right.
Like I know I'm happy if I get like even 2 pages that I feel like really psyched about. I'll feel like that's a successful day. Hell, even just writing for like an hour and a half to 2 hours, I'm like, cool. I feel like I, got to at least like tap into my subconscious, get some ideas, like good things down, so that when I come back to it, like I can start to rearrange those things.
And then, who's your biggest inspiration when it comes to playwriting?
Oh God, I would probably just have to say Shepard. Okay. His use of language is just like, I mean, it's the gold standard for me. I even go back and watch Buried Child with Ed Harris every now and then, just because it's like those monologues that are given are just so... the way that he just like creates imagery through language is kind of like on par with... well, I mean, no, it's not on par. They're one and the same. I'd say Patti Smith is another. Her use of language and the texture of language that she creates through her prose and her poetry. But Sam Shepard, man, he also just hits on something that's just very American. Right. Yeah, I just don't think any other sort of like, for me, any other writer that is like super well known has sort of like created an institution of like what the idea of America is, the identity of it, how it feels. Yeah, he's just got a cadence to him that's just like, I feel like unmatched. So
when is it time for a monologue?
Oh, that's a yeah, that's a tough one. God, I feel like a monologue kind of it's kind of necessary in a scene when you're wanting to create more visual that's beyond the scope of what's happening in the immediate. So if you're wanting to paint either a landscape of something that's happening outside or has happened to a character, there's a monologue in To Each Your Own that William just delivered with, oh God, it was eerie. But he had just had this really visceral scene where he was setting up these boundaries that with his other character and being like, don't ask me about this guy who's basically in control of what we're doing, robbing banks and whatnot. He's like, I'm not going to answer these questions. And basically he finds out that there's a problem amongst the ranks of the group. And so in order to clarify and bring to a point why he's creating the boundaries, he goes and launches into this story about his dad that may or may not be true. But that is a whole page monologue. And by the end of it, he says, that's why I'm afraid of that guy more than my dad. Oh, wow. And so it's like, I feel like with monologues in particular, they're really good senses of that, like they're really good pieces of poetry that can create those visuals that you need in order to either clarify a point, create visual outside of the immediate place that you're in. They're kind of like a song in a musical, really. When it's like they can't say or do anything else in the moment, they got to just let it go. So, yeah.
Master.
What's that?
Master it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What? We might have already hit on this, but what are you working on right now besides the vampire play? Anything else exciting?
Yeah. I'm working on a pilot to a show right now. That I have a little writers group with that we're creating. It's a little animated show that we're doing. And I'm excited about that. It's got a few horror elements in it. So that's been really fun to just kind of do like a horror comedy version of like kind of what I do. But other than that, it's, the vampire play's been big. I've got this other play that I'm working on that's kind of all about like, and it's going to be dark, but it's about internet culture. That's a horror play on its own. No, I'm working with James and Art Crush LA right now. We're basically we're trying to figure out like what would be the follow up to each their own, and maybe like whether it's an actual like piece that's already been written, or if we're going to kind of go the route of like a newer play. So yeah. When
you feel like what's the next step with the vampire play?
That's going to be a table read. Yeah.
Okay,
I need to hear the thing out loud. And that's another thing that I can't recommend enough. If you can have even just like a group of friends, if you have a script, read the thing out loud. You'll hear what's wrong with it when actors are basically like dissecting it. Mm-hmm. Whether that is, a scene is just not coming out right, an actor stumbling over words that to you thought were like simple on the page, but then you look back and it's like, no, that's like an awful sentence for them to say. It's too word crowded, simplify it. So, yeah.
And I don't know if this applies to playwriting with you, because I'm pretty sure it sounds like you write on your own.
Oh yeah.
How is it with your writers group when you guys are all working on the same thing? How does that?
So with respect to that, because I'm working on 2 scripts right now with 2 separate writer groups. One's a pilot and the other one's a slasher movie. And it's interesting because it's like, I think, for me, it's breaking my own rule, and that it's a lot of plotting. And I think that like, it's not that I don't think that plotting is necessary. I do think that it has its place. And especially if you're in a group, I think you kind of have to, in order to sort of like organize everybody's thoughts. But I do think that like, with respect to that, you do also need to allow yourself to not be married to a bunch of ideas, because, we've talked about it before in our group that like, you kind of just have to let the moment and the characters speak for themselves. Right. If you try to force a bunch of stuff into it, then it's like you can feel that, especially if you read it out loud. Right. Things will just find their way into things, and you're just kind of like, that feels like it's pushed. How
does the agreement in what direction you're going with something goes when you have that many voices?
You kind of just have to create, I don't want to say like a hierarchy, but you kind of have to create like okay, here's the head chef, here's the sous chef, here's the kitchen crew. We're all basically striving for the same goal, to make something really good. It's just like, whether you need an extra dash of salt here, or pepper here, and I think that you just have to have that person in the room who's just like, maybe we go without this for this moment. Maybe we bring that back later. And then everybody has to be in agreement that like, okay, we're going to kill that darling, and then we're going to move on or come back to that later. Mm.
So you guys aren't taking like a Game of Thrones approach where it's like, all right, I'm going to work on this scene, you work on that scene. We'll put it together and see where. I
mean, that could come later. As of right now, we've been meeting for, a few months now, and so it's made its way to where I feel like we kind of exhausted ourselves to be like, okay, now we're basically pitching like episodes for the entire season of a show, which is not a bad thing. But I was like, okay, I think now we're ready to just get at least like a good 30-page script done. And then from there, what I'm going to do is I'll basically go off, I'll write it, and then I'll bring it back to the group and be like, here you go, have at it. Let's talk it. Let's break it down. What works, what doesn't work, that kind of thing. I think it's also a trust thing. You have to have like a trust amongst the creatives that you're working with. That's like, And you'll feel it in a room. It's kind of like, it's kind of like a writer's room. You know the minute that you sit in a writer's room, who's kind of like thinking that that they're the shit, and you're like, okay, cool, like good on you. Right. But I think everybody else is just like, they just want to be in the mix.
Sure.
And I think that's like what's most important. So yeah.
Where can people find your work?
You can visit my website, traviswilliams.info. I'm on Instagram at travisdmw. I have my work, some of my radio plays on there. If you go to Gather by the Ghostlight, you can see The Quake or listen to The Quake. And then they just did my other play, Adia, which is a AI robot horror radio play, which was a lot of fun. And also watching them get to do that live on stage was really cool. Nice. Jonathan's just a cool guy and what he's doing over there anyway, and they're putting out such cool work. So just to be a part of that was just like a really great experience. So thanks for having that episode so that I could like send him my stuff. So
absolutely. No, his, I always mispronounce it, but the play that I saw of his was just, the whole premise is that, this photographer, he's a photographer, and that he photographs dead bodies, and his camera brings them back to life.
This was like a live stage play?
Yes.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
I didn't. That's awesome.
And so, it was just really interesting. And so you find out there's a couple twists in there as well, and you find out hearing her story.
Oh, damn!
About what really happened. So,
yeah,
it's a great piece. To me it's a little bit, even though it takes place in the 1800s, there's still a noir aspect to it, because you've got this, guy who's trying to research, discover the story. He's like, that's because there is no. He's a detective in his own way. He's got to figure out what put these pieces together.
Yeah.
With this dead girl. So, so it was great play. And the girl who was playing the dead girl, she just goes limp sometimes, and it's good.
Awesome.
I'm not doing it justice by any means.
No, that's awesome though. That's such a cool idea too. I love the haunted camera like genre of horror. Yeah. It's so good. That's awesome. And
well, you mentioned the socials already. That was usually my last question. Are you on the socials? But you mentioned Instagram. Or any others that you want to share?
No, that's it. Just the Instagram. I don't haven't gotten myself into the world of TikTok or anything like that. I'm just like, the one's enough, and I'm already struggling to just delete that one too.
They're necessary evils with what we do.
I know. And at this point, all I'm doing is just sending my friend like stupid reels, and that's pretty much all I use it for. But I do post like stuff that I'm working on. I got there's a really great group in town called they call themselves Drawn in Blood, and they basically create like comic book anthologies, and they were sweet enough to have me in their latest collection that's going to be coming out, I think here in June, if I'm not mistaken, or even March. But I got to write a really great 8-page short prose for them, and then they hooked me up with this artist who just accentuated the piece through her work, and I'm very excited about that one. So Drawn in Blood is another one to go to. So
all right, we'll share that as well.
Yeah.
All right, well, Travis Williams, thanks for coming on to this episode of Playwright Spotlight.
Man, thanks for having me. And also just thanks for having this as like an avenue for us to, come in and drop in and listen to. You've had a lot of like really cool, inspirational like interviews here, and it's a joy to watch. So thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad that it's helping out somebody.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah. All right, Travis, thanks again, man.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Playwright Spotlight again. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share this show with a friend. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. And in the meantime, and until we see each other again, keep writing.